is on the other side of what we're avoiding. Your identity will determine the level of success. If you do not have belief in you, you will unconsciously sabotage, you will hit ceilings. And I used to weigh 350 pounds. So anytime anyone even talked about weight in general, I took it personal. Before you know it, things fall apart. It might be your marriage. It might be your business. It might be your body. The greatest version of who you are is actually you already. You just don't know it yet. Well, welcome to the Burnup Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Nugent. It's an honor and privilege to be with you today. So if I were to ask you a question, who are you? What would your answer be to that? You know, for the men that I work with, I ask that question at the beginning of any conversation, whether we're just getting to know each other or we're starting, a coaching series. I ask, who are you? And when I'm talking to the men who I'm working with, many of them give the same answers. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a provider, I'm a friend, I'm loyal. What I would call standard answers, which all of those happen to be true. If someone's married, they're a husband. If they have kids, they're a father. And I want to go deeper when we talk about identity as far as who you are as a person or who I am. Because ultimately, identity is really this invisible operating system behind the scenes that will really determine anything and everything in our life. Our identity will shape us, will drive us. The amount of success that we can have in all the different pillars of our life will be largely determined upon our identity and how we see ourselves. And our worth is tied to that. I'm going to get into some of that as well today. Our identity matters. And there are literally millions and millions and millions of men whose identity is tied to how much money they make. This outward praise, the awards, the accolades, the success, how much money's in their bank account. Their identity is tied to that. Millions of people that have millions or have made millions and millions of dollars that still feel like they're not enough, that still feel broken, that don't feel worthy of love, that carry this weight that they can't seem to find the source to. And they pursue wealth and they pursue success, hoping to fill the void, hoping to become more of who they ultimately want to be. And yet that divide can get greater and greater and greater. And I know this all too well in my own life. For most of my life, my identity and worth was tied to how much money I made. I had a very large successful investment firm that I ended up losing through a very painful process that I've talked openly about here on this podcast and on social media. And the pain of losing that wasn't just a paycheck, wasn't just the people that were affected by it. It was losing Adam. It was losing me. It was my identity. My company wasn't a company. My company was Adam. And the success that we were getting, it would fill me, it would fuel me. My worth was tied to other people's opinions. So many decisions that I made was really to get outside validation of how I looked. My identity was mostly determined by how other people saw me. But the man that looked in the mirror didn't like the guy that he saw. The man that looked in the mirror struggled with insecurities. For most of my life, weight was a big deal. I didn't like the man, and for many years, I hated the man that I saw in the mirror. My identity of how I saw myself was fractured, didn't even connect when somebody would say, hey, you're an amazing person, or I'm so grateful for this. Many times compliments would go in one ear and out the other. Yet I needed that. It was like a drug. It fueled me, but yet it didn't always necessarily connect. I didn't necessarily see or feel the same way about myself as they felt about themselves. And it's interesting as with the men that I work with, and this has happened across the board. Take a gentleman, for example, that's making, phenomenal money, very successful financially, but let's say something's off in his marriage. There is a piece of him deep down in, and this usually isn't consciously thought of in the beginning, but as you ask more questions and we developed a stronger bond and openness to be able to share these things, there is a feeling or an emotion, sometimes very significant, of not feeling worthy of love. Other people might have a very successful relationship, but haven't had the success they want, and they don't feel worthy of success. Worth many times is tied to identity. And so I know that pain all too well. When I lost literally everything, financially, my business, reputation, everything went down the drain. I was a shell of who I first and foremost thought I was, but I didn't even know who I was. I was lost. It's interesting when they say, who would you be, or who would the man be if you lost all your money? Who would that guy be? We can all say like, oh yeah, I'm way more than money. I'm way more than that. But when it actually happens to you, and which I hope any of you listening don't ever have to actually go through that, but those that have gone through that, where they have either had to file for bankruptcy or had a business that failed or whatever, it's not just the business, it's part of the identity of our identity. It's very, very painful, very, very painful. And today I can say that I'm very, very grateful for that, because it was through that pain, it was through that rock bottom, my own personal hell, that I was able to really truly find myself. And I can say today that I'm more confident than I've ever been. I know who I am. I know my worth. And it's a completely different energy that's not tied to other people's opinions or other people's perspectives. Now, granted, I still care what other people think. Don't get me wrong. But I'm in a season today that I still care what other people think, but I don't care more about what they think more than what I think about myself. It's very, very different. When I was going through the pain of losing my company, I had a coach, I was telling him, I'm like, I wish I didn't care what anybody thought. And he goes, no, you don't. I'm like, I really do. I hate how this feels. And he says, if you did, you'd be a raging narcissist. And he's the one that I'm actually stealing that quote from. He said, listen, you still, you're human. So it's normal, if you will, to be affected by how other people see you and other people's opinions. But the goal is to get to a place to where you are so rock solid in who you are that while somebody might say something, it might sting, you might disagree, it doesn't shake your identity. And it's fascinating that, as I share my story and as we talk about these things and share stories of other guests on the podcast, as we get deeper and deeper in this is a common theme across the board, both for men and women, but especially for men. Again, society and praise, it's like, how much money do you make? What do you do? I always joke that if you go to a networking event in the business world, everybody's, bragging about what they're doing this or doing that. And I always say, look, this guy's bragging about who has the biggest dick, who's driving the nicest car, who's got the hottest wife, who's got whatever. And the reality is some of that might be true, but a lot of it's a mask. A lot of it, a lot of us as men will show up thinking that we need to show up a certain way to impress or for them to like us. And it's not uncommon that people wear masks. I can say today, more than ever, I don't wear a mask. And authenticity is a big deal to me. I'm drawn to authenticity. I'm drawn to people that put themselves out there, even if I don't connect with their message. I feel like I've got an art that, somebody, for example, on social media could be just coming in hot about how they believe. And then you've got all the trolls and everybody just, coming at them very hard, disagreeing with them. I respect somebody that's willing to put themselves out there, because the more authentic you are, the more you're going to have certain people not like you. The more success you have, the more exposure you have, you're going to have other people that don't agree with you. And that was really, really hard for me to wrap my arms around. I remember going back in high school, I ran for student body president, and there were 2 or 3 times, and I remember this one time in particular, that I was walking past a classroom and I heard my name. So I talked by, and these 2 girls, I didn't even know who they were. They both said they didn't like me. They don't like Adam. I don't like Adam. And it hurt and it stung. And I had a whole thing around it. My feelings were hurt. I was sulking. I went home. It was a thing for quite a while. How could they not like me? How could they not this? How could they whatever? And the truth is, I didn't even know who they were. They were 2 girls. Maybe I recognized them or not, but I didn't know who they were. And the truth is, they didn't even know me. They just formed an opinion. Maybe they heard this or that or whatever, but I let it affect me, 2 strangers, about how they see me. And so I'm drawn to people that are willing to show up for themselves and be more authentic. And a big part of that, which I believe a lot of people are able to do that, and I'm seeing in my own life as I'm putting myself out there more and more, is I know who I am more than ever. And when someone is confident in who they are, they're more willing to put themselves out there. Now, I believe that we are 100% responsible for any reaction, any trigger that we have. So we can point a finger you offended me, or, you did this, or you said this. And if it hurts us, there's something that person says that we connect with in one form or another. So for example, if somebody came up to me today and said, hey, I think you're fat, it would go in one ear and out the other, because I know I'm not. Now, if I was 10 pounds heavier, it might sting a little bit because I'm feeling a little bit out of shape. I'm not feeling as, where I once was, and I used to weigh 350 pounds. So trust me, anytime anyone even talked about weight in general, I took it personal. Why? Because I was sensitive. There was something about that and how I saw myself. My own identity was tied to that. And so the more confident you are in who you are as a man or a woman, the less affected you're going to be by other people. And here's the reality too. Many times people will see us or look at us, especially if something's happened in the past. Much of our identity can be tied to things that we've done. And that's something I've had to really, really work through of, if I've done some things that I'm not proud of, mistakes, failure, whatever it happens to be, that's something that I did. That's not who I am. And for example, if you betrayed or did something to somebody, you really hurt somebody, let's say years ago, and they don't even know who you are, you're a completely different person. They only know that previous version of you. And understand that if someone has feelings around you, the truth of the matter is it's just a projection of their own experiences, and many times it helps keep them stuck. This is why with divorce, There are certain couples that have been divorced for 20 years and can't even be in the same room with their ex-wife or ex-husband. Why can one couple be friends, hang out, but yet someone 20 years later, they can't even be in the same room? It's because part of the reason they see a certain person a certain way is that it supports their narrative. It supports them. They don't want to take radical accountability or ownership for their role. They can't. Many times people aren't willing to be like, well, maybe they have changed. Maybe they are different. I'd like to get to know. That's why I'm a huge fan of asking questions and being curious. We live in a society that is so polarized by politics and religion and all the things, and so quick to judge, so quick to point a finger. And one of the most beautiful things about going through shit or losing things or failure, especially in a very public way, is that you learn to have empathy. You learn to have understanding. So today, if somebody says, hey, I can't believe he did this or she did this, my first instinct today is, I wonder what else there is. I wonder what the other side of the story is. I wonder what led them to that, to do that. And that's why when, I've been through a divorce. So if you've gone through a divorce, people that have been through divorce, it's all of a sudden you actually know. And I truly believe the only way you can have empathy for somebody, true empathy, is if you've experienced it. The only way you can know something is if you've experienced it. Otherwise, it's just a belief. And so the reality is most of the decisions that we make in any given day are really a byproduct of, you could trace all the way back to how we were raised, religious, programming, all the different things, society, where in the world or where in the United States were we born. I mean, there's so many factors that lead into the decisions that we make. So the reality is, unless we've actually lived in somebody's shoes and fallen the exact same path, we really truly don't know. But yet we're so quick to judge. So coming back to identity. So if you are, and I'm speaking to men mostly here, but if you're a man looking in the mirror, right? And again, your bank account might be overflowing. You've got the house, you've got the cars, you've got the family. But if you feel like something's missing inside, something's dead, you feel off, or you don't feel fulfilled, right? That is a sign that there's some work to do. There's some inner work to do. That, it could be that you're not worthy of that. It could be that there's other parts of your life. Many times, and this has been the case, this was the case for me, is not knowing how to address or manage those pains or those feelings of not enough or worthiness. We tend to turn to addictive behaviors, substances, patterns, whatever it happens to be, because we don't want to necessarily feel that. And I'm a real big believer that in order to have a very truly solid, we'll say rock solid identity as a man or as a woman, it's imperative that the foundation of who we are is rock solid, that it doesn't have cracks. And, I built a financial empire on stilts. My emotional well-being was shit. My physical body was relationally not good, but yet all of my worth and time went into money because that's where I got fulfillment. But the reality is the pursuit of wealth, the pursuit of success, the energy of, while that was temporary, it felt good. It wasn't, no matter how much money I made, it could not fill the voids that were in my marriage, that were in my physical health, my spiritual health, or my emotional health. And however it got down, it was inevitable that my financial empire that I built was going to fall. It was built on stilts. And so one of the most beautiful things about loss or pain is it gives you an opportunity to start over. It gives you an opportunity to rebuild. And this time, as I've been rebuilding here over the last couple of years, my foundation as far as who I am as a man is more solid than it's ever been. And I'm not making near the money that I used to make, but I can tell you that, yes, it matters. And I know I'm building something special. I'm doing some incredible things. I know I'll build something bigger and better than I ever did before. But this time, it's built on a very strong foundation. I know who I am. My worth is not tied to a relationship. My worth is not tied to how much money I make. I know who I am. I know who Adam is. And again, it took a lot of pain to get there. And understand that we are the authors of our life. So, we have certain stories. So the example I gave earlier about couples that can't be in the same room. Well, many times the reasons people can't do that is, again, there's a story, there could be a martyrdom, there's a victim, they don't want to forgive. I mean, the list could go on and on and on. But more often than not, it's because how they view the other person fits their narrative. And if you can point a finger at somebody else and the way they're showing up, it takes away the pressure of looking at yourself. Because the hardest person we have ever faced, currently face, or will ever face is ourselves. It's the man or woman in the mirror that stares back at us. That's where the real work is. And, we can lie, we can wear masks, but if we're standing there, butt ass naked, looking in the mirror with nobody around, what's the story you're telling yourself? How do you see yourself? Who are you? Who are you? And I went through the pain of losing my investment business. This is in April of a couple years ago, about 2.5 years ago. I went on social and I talked about it. Took accountability for the role that I played. I talked about how painful it was. I talked about nearly taking my life. Dark. And I had a gentleman that scared me to death. To be that open, that vulnerable online, scared me to death. And one of the things that came out of that, and I expected investors that lost money to lambast me. It was very public. I expected, my expectation, my story, if you will, was that I was just going to get beat up. But I knew I had to. I had this calling. I had to finally start talking about it. Everybody else is talking about it, and I haven't said anything. And it was the complete opposite. It was hundreds and hundreds of messages of love, of compassion, of understanding, even from existing investors that were affected by it. But the thing that surprised me the most was the number of men that sent me private messages. You saved my life today. Thanks for being brave. I'm not alone. And I'd gone through 3 years of hell leading up to this thing, and literally the tears streaming down my face, uncontrollable crying. And it was the first time that I really felt the impact of the power of vulnerability, the power of being just real. That was the most real, authentic I have ever been publicly in my entire life. And it was scary to be that real, to be that open. 2 or 3 days later, I had a gentleman reach out to me that I hadn't talked to in nearly 10 years. I had tried to buy his company previously. And he calls me and he's like, "Hey, Adam, I saw your video." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Can I share my story?" So he then goes on to share a story. He said only a couple people knew this. I haven't talked to this man in 10 years. And he began to share that he lost his identity, his career, and retired and lost who he was. And he ended up, nearly taking his own life. So here's a man that I haven't spoken to in 10 years. Only a handful of people know it. I'm not in his inner circle. And yet he felt comfortable sharing something very open and very vulnerable with me. Why? Because I created and opened up space for that. My authenticity, my openness, if you will, gave him permission to do the same. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, "How cool is it at 45 you get a do-over? Who gets a do-over at 45? Now, I was not in that headspace at the time. Trust me, I was not feeling that way. Reputation, lost millions of dollars. I mean, just so much pain. I did not see it that way. And yet, here's a man looking at one situation. I'm looking at one situation, same situation, 2 different perspectives. And I can tell you today that for me personally, not for anyone that was affected by it, but for me personally, I see that. I feel that way. It's like, what do I want? I can do anything I want if I'm the creator of my life. But what I had to do to get to this point was I had to rewrite the story. I had to rewrite the narrative. I had to rewrite who was Adam and what is my identity. And what's interesting is at the end of the day, what matters the most is how I see myself. It's how you see yourself. And I was like a fart in the wind. I was all over the place. If someone was, I was a super codependent relationship. So, my marriage, if we were good, I was good. And if we were bad, I was bad. And we were not good for much of our marriage. And so I tied my worth, identity, and everything tight, to how our marriage was. I was codependent in relationships or friendships. If somebody was upset with me, I'd want her to try to placate. I wouldn't be totally, transparent with my feelings because I didn't want to hurt them. I was trying to control narratives. I mean, I'm a recovering people pleaser. And when you start, putting up boundaries and you start speaking to things and you start saying no, it's fascinating how certain people just will go away. So if you're an overgiver and constantly, people pleasing or paying for things or whatever it happens to be, when you shift or start to shift that, you'll be shocked at who actually stays in your life. You'll be shocked. I had a lot of people when I started to shift that went away. That was painful. So that triggered that, I'm not enough, my identity, it's tied to other people even more so. And so going through this process, I had to rewrite my story. And I happened to be, working. It was funny at the time. I was working with a relationship coach with my ex-girlfriend at the time. I was working with this coach. We actually ended up breaking up during, this 12 weeks that I'd committed to with her. And, she said, do you want to continue? And I'm in a season like, hey, I want to fall through the commitments. Let's keep doing it. And she introduced me to this whole concept as far as, introduced me to a book, said, hey, you need to, I think this would be really good for you to read. And she was, and my belief is she was divinely guided to recommend this book. And it was a book that I devoured. And it was all about how you see yourself, the power of how you see yourself, written by another very successful coach. And it's something that I just, it's almost like God put the blinders on and say, read this. I mean, I read this thing 20 times, started to embody this, started to listen to it. And so then I sat there. So I read it, I studied it. So now am I actually going to take it and apply it in my own life? How many times do we go hear the Tony Robbins of the world? We get excited. We read the books, the self-help books, the coaches, the therapists, and all the things. But then we don't take what we're learning. We have those aha moments, but then we go back to doing the exact same damn thing we were doing before, right? How many times do we do that? To really embody or integrate change, it requires change. It requires effort. It requires that we get uncomfortable out of our comfort zone. And again, being in this season, what's the beautiful thing is when you've lost everything, you have nowhere else to go but up. And literally finally get into a space. It's like, what do I have to lose? I might as well go for this. So I started to embody this. And one of the first things that I really started to embody and wanted to change was worthiness, my worth. I was raised Mormon. Worthiness is, in the Mormon faith and a lot of just religion in general, like you're, in many cases, you're worthy if you're, following these rules or you're obeying these commandments or these laws or whatever it happens to be. And if you're not worthy. So, for example, in Mormonism, just one small example, you're baptized when you're 8. And then every week you basically you renew your baptismal covenants by taking the sacrament, bread and water. Well, if you've done certain things, if you've been messing around dating, sexual impurities, as they would call it, or alcohol or whatever happens to be, you are not considered worthy to be able to take the sacrament. So worthiness is really tied. A lot of what I grew up in is like, well, I'm not worthy because I'm not doing this, this, and this, or I'm not reading the scriptures enough, or I'm not going to the temple enough, whatever happens to be. So, but what I'm talking about worthiness, I'm not talking about anything tied to religion. I'm talking to be just the inherent value as a human being. And I remember when I went to therapy for the first time, when I was married and I, several sessions into it, and my therapist looked at me and she goes, Adam, do you feel worthy of love? And I couldn't even answer the question. I mean, the answer at the time was no. But I couldn't even come out and say, hell yeah, I do. Hell yeah, I'm worthy of love. I couldn't even answer the question. That is sad. And I have a lot of love and empathy for that guy. And for many people, that there are literally millions of you out there that don't feel worthy of love, that don't feel worthy of success. And I'm here to tell you, it's just a story. It's a story you've written that may or may not have been reinforced by religion or family or society or whatever happens to be. But I'm telling you, it's a story and you can rewrite that. So when I started to embody this process as far as my identity, who I am, I started with worthiness. So I started to tell myself, literally, I'm worthy and deserving of anything and everything I want. I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy. Basically, what I did and continue to do, and what I help with the men that I work with is much of what I do is what we're doing is we're rewriting or overriding, if you will, old programs that don't serve us. We are basically overriding what the unconscious believes or tells us. That negative self-talk that, I'm not enough, or you'll never amount to anything, or you're going to fail, whatever happens to be. You've got to be able to counter that. And I can tell you from my own personal experience and the countless men that I've worked with is that you can tell a different story. And I can tell you with confidence that I do not question my worth. It doesn't even come up anymore. Not at all. In fact, the more and more I've done this and what I teach is I don't even have necessarily a negative self-talk there. Now, granted, do I get upset? Do I have my own fears? Of course, I'm human. But the voice in my head that used to beat me to death beat me to a pulp. That voice inside my head that used to talk to me like I would never talk to anyone, even my worst enemies, that voice is gone. I don't remember the context of it. I saw a quote on a Joe Rogan podcast, and one of the things that he said was, they were talking about the negative self-talk, and one of the things he said is, I silenced that bitch a long time ago. And I'll never forget that. And that's ultimately what I did. But it started by rewriting the story. It started by telling something different. And it takes repetition. It takes mantras. I'm telling you, this works. And there's levels to it. And so I started to add more and more and started telling myself more and more. And I can tell you with certainty that the minute I started to embody this, the minute I started this, everything changed for me overnight. Literally, in the flip of a switch, everything changed overnight. I didn't question my worth, and energetically, and things started to come into my life as I started to see myself as a different person, as a higher person. The word manifestation is used a lot these days. Is like, how do you manifest this? How do you manifest that? My belief is, in order to manifest something, you have to be that. You have to be what you want to attract. If you're single and you're dating, and let's say you have your wish list of 10 things you want your, future partner to have, the question you need to ask yourself is, number one, am I embodying all 10 of those things? Number one. And number two is, if I find someone that has all those boxes checked, are they going to want to be with me? I believe everything is energy. And so again, if you want to attract something into your life, you have to be that. You have to live that. You have to embody that energy. So part of this process I take through is really, I call it, helping, men draft their personal declaration. So when I ask who you are, it comes off in the most bold thing that if anyone else heard it and they didn't know what you were talking about, would think you're a raging narcissist, egomaniac. But at the end of the day, what matters most is how you see you. So again, someone that says they're a father. Hey, I'm a father. I'm a father. Okay, great. Because, but what if you started telling yourself, I'm the greatest dad on the planet. I'm the greatest dad on the planet. I'm the greatest father on the planet. Who is to tell you otherwise? But imagine if you told yourself that over and over and over and over, and you come home from work and you've had a long day, hard day, and you want to kick your feet up, watch a game, chill out for a minute, and your 3-year-old son walks over and says, Dad, I want to play, I want to play, I want to play, right? And the last thing you want to do, frankly, is play. You just need a minute. But you've told yourself you're the greatest dad in the world. You're the greatest dad in the world. Who's going to get off that couch? A dad or the greatest dad in the world? The dad, maybe. Someone that just sees himself as a dad might just, hey, son, I need some time. I need 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and gets distracted. Doesn't happen. But the greatest dad in the world, he's going to get off the couch and go play with his son, even though he doesn't want to. Why? Because he has told himself that. And when you tell yourself something over and over and over and over and over, the action will follow. And if it doesn't, right, that's integrity, when words and actions are aligned. And so the more you tell yourself this, the more you see yourself that, you will find that when you're not showing up into that, you start to feel anxiousness. You start to feel certain things. And I take people through a process of being able to actually kind of mold those two together. But it's a way of getting your alignment and your words and your actions aligned. That's integrity. It starts with you. And I'm telling you, the root of it is your identity, is how you see yourself. Everything is rooted in a story. And how you see yourself is based upon the story you tell yourself. So who are you? Who are you? If you can't come out boldly, confidently, and just say, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, whatever it happens to be, you've got some work to do there. And this doesn't mean that, you're overly confident, you're an egomaniac walking around, right? We all know those people. We all know those guys, right? Confidence is quiet. Confidence it's energy. And as I've stepped more into this, I've never had so many people come up to me and ask, who are you? What do you do? I mean, I'm not strutting, I'm just being me. But energetically, I see myself in such a different way. In the way I carry myself, I'm more confident than I've ever been. And that confidence is attractive. It's energy. We all know what it looks like, when it feels like when a man or woman walks into a room and it's like, whoo, what did they have for breakfast? Who is that? I want to get to know them. You feel drawn to them. Confidence, I believe, is the most attractive quality any man or woman can have. It's sexy. It's magnetic. But how does one get confident? Again, Men tie it to money and success. And yes, there's confidence that comes in that. I was super confident in that. But when I was alone, when I was by myself, that confidence, when there wasn't this outside thing, wasn't there in the other parts of my life. And I'm here to tell you that you can have it all. You can be confident in your body, finances, relationship, but it will require work. It will require you rewriting new stories. It will require that if there are cracks in your foundation, that they need to be filled. Cracks can turn into something much bigger and bigger, and you can't avoid it. If you're turning to addictive patterns or behaviors, I'll get to this tomorrow, you don't want to feel, I'm telling you, you're just kicking the can down the road. Every day you wait and not addressing a crack, whether that crack's a hard conversation, whether that crack's taking ownership, whether it's taking accountability, whether it's getting up in the morning and working out because you're 50 pounds or 100 pounds overweight, you've got to start, because those cracks will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And before you know it, things fall apart. It might be your marriage. It might be your business. It might be your body. I'm telling you, there's a cost to everything. And I'm telling you, and this is coming from somebody that literally lost it all: relationships, body, business. I know the highs of highs and the lows of lows. And I'm telling you, I am not special. I've just made intentional choices. Some of them were forced, but ultimately I still chose to lean in. I still chose to lean into the hard. I chose to rewrite the stories. And I'm telling you, you are the author and you are the creator of your life. No one is coming to save you. No one. I mean, I'll share this. I don't think I've ever said this publicly. When I was going through the hell, I literally had convinced myself, like, you know what? It's a valid thing that I'm going to buy a lottery ticket, and I'm going to go win the lottery. My intention's pure. It'll take care of people that lost money. It's going to solve all the problems. I live in Utah, driving, 90 minutes up to Evanston, Wyoming to buy lottery tickets. That's how desperate I was. That I just literally buying lottery tickets. I mean, come on, really? It's crazy. But at the time I was in such a dark, low place that I was searching for anything, someone to come and save me. And here's what I'm here to tell you. No one is coming to save you. And here's something else even deeper. One of the main reasons that I got into this work is I wanted to help men avoid the pain the darkness that I was in. And I truly hope that no one ever feels the levels of darkness and pain. I nearly took my life. I mean, I literally was this close. Ugly, dark, disassociate from reality. And I wanted to help men avoid all of that. Well, here's the truth. The answers that you're searching for, the light, if you will, is actually found in your own personal darkness. It's what you're avoiding. And for those that work with me, what you get is somebody that has experienced it, that has knowledge, that can empathize, that can connect with you, that knows the pain. Now, granted, everybody's situations are a little uniquely different, but yet I know that. I know it because I've experienced it. And if I can do this, so can you. And one of the advantages of working with somebody that's been through something or that has overcome a particular challenge that you're facing is that they understand, they know. You can read as many books, you can take all the certifications. I'm telling you, that doesn't mean shit if you haven't lived it. I used to give advice in my investment firm, divorce advice all the time. It was good. It's pragmatic. Wasn't quote unquote bad. And then I went through my own. And I'm here to tell you, I didn't know shit until I went through my own. And my advice shifted. My advice changed. And then you know what happened? When all of a sudden someone was going through it, or a client that just gone through it, guess what? They're like, oh, he knows, or she knows. Knowing is through experience. And again, I've experienced that, going from a unhealthy people pleaser to losing identity to being now more confident than I've ever been. This work, I'm living and breathing proof that this works. But it's not going to be without pain. It's not going to be easy. And I say, the hard button, it's hard right now, but the more you do it and the more you lean into it, the easier it becomes. The hard button becomes the easy button. So again, as we wrap things up here, your identity will determine the level of success, the level of love, the level of spiritual connection, emotional well-being, physical health. All of it is how you see yourself, your belief in who you are. And if you do not have belief in you, you will unconsciously sabotage, you will hit ceilings. And And no matter who it's with, no matter what you're doing, you will continue to hit that until you can rewrite the narrative, rewrite the story, and reclaim your identity. Because the greatest version of who you are is actually you already. You just don't know it yet. And again, as the author, write a different story. This work is not easy, but I'm telling you, it comes down to a decision. And if you're willing to lean in, let go of the addictive patterns, let go of the old stories, become radical accountable, take 100% responsible for everything in your life will change what it feels like in overnight. And you go through this process and you actually start to see yourself in this highest, greatest version, the greatest dad in the world, the greatest lover, whatever it is you want to call yourself, whatever you want, you can be that, but you've got to believe that's who you are today. And then watch the universe and watch God bring it into your life. I believe that, whatever you believe in the God of the universe, but, I believe God, again, isn't going to come and save us. But I also believe that when we put forth the effort, God's going to, will reward us tenfold. But we've got to put forth effort first. We've got to shift. We've got to change. We have to take that first step or first 10 steps or first 100 or maybe even the first 1,000 steps. But when we've given it our all, that's when the magic happens. This shit is real. And again, I'm living proof of this, and I am so passionate and I am so grateful for the pain. Again, I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but pain is a gift. Fear is a calling. My tagline is freedom is in the fire. Everything that we want is on the other side of what we're avoiding. Everything. The money, the relationship, the body. The avoidance, and that's where addiction kicks in, is what's preventing us from doing that. And so when we have to get out of whatever addictive pattern we're in, there's a detox that's associated with it. It's uncomfortable. Our body's not used to it. It's going to scream. It's the dopamine. There's all the science behind it. But if you can stay in it, one day at a time, what felt impossible then becomes possible. What was once hard becomes easy. What was once something you did, it's now who you are. I'm telling you, this stuff works, and I'm so passionate about it. And again, I implore you, if you are struggling in finding your identity, know there's some work to do there. I work with elite men that have had business success. And for any of you out there that are feeling struggle, that no matter how much money you take, shoot me a message. Let's talk. I'm very selective with who I work with, but I'm telling you, this stuff works. It has transformed my life. It transforms other men's It has transformed other men's lives. And I'm telling you, if you want it, go get it. It's theirs. It's yours for the taking. And the only difference between someone who has made it and who hasn't is the person that's made it has been willing to do something that the person that hasn't made it do, with an asterisk, just yet. It's the only difference. The formula to this stuff is, again, there's lots of factors to get into it, but at the end of the day, if you want it, go get it. And the successful people that have it in the relationship and the money in their body, whatever it happens to be, it's because they've been willing to do things that you have not been willing to do up to this point. Up to this point's the key thing. And you can literally change overnight. It won't be easy, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. I appreciate you. Thank you for joining me today on the Burnup Podcast. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm active on Instagram and Facebook. And look forward to our next week. Again, I appreciate your support. Again, thank you for joining me on the Burnup Podcast.